Welcome to this episode of the Ep.5 podcast. Today I'm interviewing Payne, who was a photographic journalist turned video journalist turned independent journalist, videographer, and documentary filmmaker. So I actually came across her via Instagram. One of the pages that was suggested to me had a post about basically like the experience of making a documentary film. And I commented with my 2 cents and we started a conversation. I got in her DMs and said, hey, thanks for interacting with me in the comments. I'd love to have you on a podcast about documentary filmmaking, yada, yada, yada. And here we are. So we got to talk about the difference between journalism and documentary filmmaking, along with the similarities between those two, the intricacies of making a film, planning a documentary film, being an independent documentary filmmaker, how to make money as a documentary filmmaker, etc. So if those are things you're interested in, this is the episode for you. I'm not going to keep talking. Hopefully you enjoy this episode because I sure as hell did.
At this point, I can't afford to turn jobs down.
You're out there in LA, you gotta bring in the money.
Yeah.
So, okay, so your comment about that we had a little dialogue on Instagram. Jesus Christ, this freaking thing. I'm sorry about this. So we had a back and forth on Instagram. You had been talking about the differences between like documentary work and then journalism and how there's like overlaps, but there's also like the difference of journalism can sometimes be more forced and created in a way, quote unquote, like than just simple like observational documentary work. And I thought that was very interesting. I had seen an interview with Steve James before. Do you know who he is? Yeah.
No. Is
So,
he a filmmaker?
Yes. And Steve James is, he did Hoop Dreams.
Oh, yes.
And
Yeah.
America to Me. Like he's done a bunch of like big network documentaries and stuff. And actually he lives in the town that I live in. And he did a documentary about my high school when I was a freshman, and it was on Stars and stuff. And I looked up an interview with him, and he said, like, documentary is 1,000 lies to make one truth. Like,
that's very interesting viewpoint. I find that fascinating. Yeah.
And I feel like I don't even know what to do about this. This cat.
The cat wants to be interviewed.
I'm like, come on, dude. You can't even speak. Okay, so I feel like that's the best way you could put it, just because like when you're it's not like you can just like record stuff that happens and then like throw it together in complete chronological order and then make something that people want to watch. So you kind of have like telling the truth in every single shot and every single cut like is impossible if you want to make something entertaining. So you kind of have, but it all has to make the truth in some way.
True.
So I'm curious, like, I feel like nobody talks about the journalism side of documentary filmmaking. And I want to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, well, I'd love to share it because I'm coming in as an industry outsider because I've got 20 years in journalism now. Wow. And filmmaking is not my background. I didn't go to film school. I'm a journalist. So it's completely foreign to me to see kind of how things are approached from the filmmaker's perspective. I'm learning a lot, but I'm hoping to combine the best of both worlds and bring something unique to filmmaking from my journalism experience.
Yeah.
And also bring some of the wonderful things of filmmaking that I couldn't do as a journalist into the process as well. So I really believe there's a lot of magic that can happen at the intersection of two different areas of looking at things.
What are the differences you see off the bat
between filmmaking and journalism?
Yeah.
Well, like we talked about, the creation of a story. Well, actually, I'm going to back up. The first one, the major difference is the way sponsors are a part of filmmaking processes. So, say you're making a documentary that's promoting the keto diet, and you've got people that are interested in promoting the keto diet that will give you money to make this film, and then you
Yeah.
find all the evidence, the anecdotal evidence to support why the keto diet is the best diet. So, you're not looking to find the truth, you're looking to create a story that promotes a certain perspective. Same
Right.
with the vegan diet. So, in journalism, have you heard of the guy Michael Pollan? He's a journalist who did some books on the topic of diet,
Hmm.
and he also did some documentaries on diet as well. But he's a journalist first, so he set out to find out the truth of what the best diet is. So, as
Okay.
a journalist, I'm looking for truth. I'm not looking to back up my perspective and find evidence to only support that perspective. I'm looking for the big picture and then to give you, like, without saying it should be this or that, I'm trying to say, um, this is what really is. And it's a little bit more confusing, maybe at first, but that's our job as storytellers, is to try to make it more digestible to the public.
That is okay. So I'm a little shocked just because when I think of media, like journalism and the media and like that side of content nowadays, it's like I think of I almost get a sense of like the media isn't what searches for the truth. Like they're searching for views, they're searching for fear mongering. But then from an independent individual journalist, I hear about how you're just truth seeking, and then the documentary filmmaking is like where it starts to get like a little corrupt. That is so interesting to me. Yeah, like you would think it's like not what you would think
Well,
is.
it's what I would think because I have a degree in journalism and I've been working in it for 20 years. But lately, the narrative has changed to demonize journalists.
Mhm.
Basically, journalists are going out there trying to seek the truth. Um, does that mean we always succeed? No, we don't, because we're human and we make mistakes, and maybe we have our own biases here or there, but at least we make an attempt.
Right.
Like, we really truly make an attempt. And for any journalist that is not making an attempt at truth, like, they're not going to get a job. And if it's found out that they're trying to promote false information, they're going to get fired. Like, it's
Hmm.
plain and simple. But the thing is, I look at it as sort of a shoot the messenger, don't shoot the messenger type of a situation, where the king brings in the messenger, the king doesn't like the message, so he shoots the messenger, right? It's
Yeah.
sort of where journalists are at right now, where we
Right.
say, well, hey, this is going on, and people are like, we don't like it, so you're wrong. But with documentary film, you can choose the films that agree with your viewpoint, and you can sit there and eat popcorn and say, oh, I'm so right, and I feel really good about this,
Yeah.
So it's something that people enjoy doing, is to feel right, right?
Yeah.
People enjoy feeling right. They don't like to have their viewpoints challenged. And that's what real journalism does sometimes, is challenge your viewpoints.
So what I'm gathering is it's like it's not one type of media that distorts truth in the name of like capitalism or like in like making money or like it's you're from all different, you're from photography and you're a journalist and you're just doing documentary filmmaking and you're seeing it across the board in general.
Well, here's the problem with the term the media.
Okay.
It's really vague. And
Yes.
people throw it around all the time. The media can mean our documentary films. The media could mean mainstream media. The media can mean books.
Social
Uh,
media.
Social media. I mean, the media really means nothing. It could mean a fashion magazine as media.
So it's just more like when you hear that term, you're just more like it's just people blaming this bigger thing that's not. It's almost like avoiding personal.
Yeah. It's much easier to look at me and say, you're fake than it is to
Yeah.
say, the media is fake news, right? But it's good to make a distinction between media, which is all media that we consume, and mainstream news media, which follows a certain set of ethical principles when it delivers it. And even within that, newspapers are vastly different from television. So television, if it bleeds, it leads. So they're going to go after what's going to attract someone's attention when they're flipping through the television. So they're going to go more towards your murders, your car accidents, things that are more exciting like that. Whereas newspapers, someone's going to sit down and read a story. There's more depth to it. So the media is a catch-all term for anything we don't like, but there's actually huge variety.
Yes. So when I was referring to how people don't like the media and they feel like the media is not truthful, I was referring to mainstream news media. I just didn't have that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm just clarifying for like anybody who's listening, just because like, um, I didn't have that term in my repertoire until you said it. So, but perks of doing a podcast. But so what's your documentary about?
Well, my documentary is called Judah the Lionheart, and it's about a 4-year-old little boy with congenital heart defects.
Wow.
And so he was diagnosed in utero with these severe defects. It was recommended that maybe the mother might abort the pregnancy, but she chose to bring this child to term, not knowing if he was even going to survive birth. And it's been a huge journey. He just had his 4th open heart surgery, and there's been some complications after that. And it's just documenting what medical families go through with such a difficult situation with caring for a medically fragile child. So the crazy thing about this, and this is something I didn't know until I met the mother, is that congenital heart defects are the #1 cause of infant death in the country, and perhaps
Wow.
probably even the world. And I didn't even know that. So 40,000 children a year are born in the US with these defects. And there are many people going through this, but there's not very much funding or awareness on the topic. So it's a very personal story to this family, but it also represents what many people are going through. So it has a social um, impact aspect to it.
Mm-hmm. So what are you doing with the film? Like, is it finished?
No, so currently I'm in the filming process.
Okay.
I'm hoping to finish filming by the end of the summer and then move into post-production. Um, at this point, I'm pretty much doing it on my own for the most part. I've got a composer that I'm working with, a storytelling consultant, and the mother, of course, is working very closely with me to tell this story. But we'll be moving into fundraising and looking for sponsors. I have one sponsor currently, and he's amazing because he's very concerned with truth. You know, he's like, do your thing, just find out the truth. We're not trying to promote an agenda, just here's some sponsorship. And yeah, so shout out to Middle Way Health
Hmm.
for doing that.
How for sponsors? I want to hear more about how you're getting sponsors and what is that process like? How does a sponsor involve themselves in a film in your experience?
Well, so far I've got the one, and this is somebody that I knew that personally wanted to help. He uh, has a foundation, a mental health foundation, and he wanted to help. So that was our first sponsor. But for the next step, we're applying for 501(c) status, so to operate as a nonprofit, and then we can accept donations as a nonprofit, and people can use it as a tax write-off. So there will be most likely a crowdfunding campaign in the fall. unless we get significant sponsorship before that from other sources. But I'll be applying for grants. So first is the 501(c), and then applying for grants. And then if we don't get enough grant money, then we'll move into crowdfunding.
Gotcha. So you're already filming and you're planning on filming through end of summer. Where does that sponsorship money go? Because it doesn't sound like you need it for the filming process.
Well, I have my gear and I'm filming, but to be honest, it's burning a hole in my pocket, right? Because every day that I'm filming, I am not spending making money with my other videography. So, in short, I do need to get my expenses paid because there's been travel. I need to pay my composer, legal, all of these things. So there are expenses, but it would be nice to make some money to pay for some of the time involved as well, because I do need to pay my own bills.
Right. Okay. I ask that just because I feel like there's a lot to be learned there with each and every filmmaker. Like, what does the financial side of being a documentary filmmaker look like? I'm genuinely curious when I ask that because I have no idea. So tell me, like like um like like I'm young, I'm starting to make documentary films, and the first one I made was just completely by myself with like my aunt's point and shoot, and then like I ended up saving up some money and buying a camera, and I finished filming it with the Canon 80D. Do you know what that camera is? Okay, so it's basically like it's a DSLR, but it's like mid-level. It's not even professional. And then but I did it, and then like this next one I'm doing, I'm making it about a fighter, and the fighter put up the budget to do it, which is like it's like micro budget. But I just have no idea how it works. So I'm just like, what is how do you make money as a documentary filmmaker? Because every time I've talked to people, they're like, it's kind of a labor of love, and I kind of don't want to believe that. Like, I want to believe there's ways to like make it a profitable business and like make great work at the same time.
Yeah, and I think it is possible. I'm still trying to crack the code myself. For one, ultimately, my goal is to get this distributed in the educational market for two reasons. First, because I think that's the appropriate audience for this film is nurses, humanities students, people in college. That's who we really want to meet, is get these nurses on the front end knowing what these medical families are going through. So it seems like an appropriate outlet as far as our audience goes. But secondly, in the educational market, you can make money. Every time they sell your film to a college, they split the profits 50-50, and you can potentially make some money off of your filmmaking. There's a lot of distribution outlets. Sometimes, for the most part, for small filmmakers, you don't see any money in distribution unless you're really savvy. But I'm working on it. You know why? Because I got two kids.
Right. Yeah.
And you're young and you're just starting out, and so absolutely try to crack that code. There's a way to do it.
Can I tell you what I think? Yeah, I mean, and I'll definitely continue this conversation with you even after this podcast, but like something I'm really interested in is the subscription model for independent creators, because like there's a lot of big YouTubers with Patreon pages where they make tens of thousands of dollars a month to create their work. And there's like also like huge corporations that are subscription models, and it's like we have the ability to literally make a website and set it up so people can pay monthly, and we can promise a certain amount of content. So like, to be transparent, part of the reason I want to do this podcast and start it up is to start building an audience to be able to do something like that. And I think that's kind of a slept on thing that people don't really think of in filmmaking as much, because there's already such an industry there. But I grew up in the YouTube era, and where you made money from ad revenue, and then like sponsorships and all that. So I'm curious to see if I can do that, or like if other people will do it.
Oh, you can absolutely do it. If that's what you want to do it. And
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right to be thinking about your money because eventually you might have a family or you might have goals outside of where you're at right now.
Mhm.
And everything is changing. You don't have to rely on the old system of distribution anymore because we have the internet. So what you're talking about, the subscription model, is absolutely, right on if you're the type of person who uh, wants to present yourself that way and build an audience. Like, absolutely, there's much success to be had. I'm
Thank
actually
you. Yeah.
collaborating with a company called Blackbox.global. I don't know if you've heard of them. If you haven't, you should. Blackbox.global. Write it down.
Shameless
um,
plug.
yes, yes. And he's working on something called creator freedom. And he started out with, you've heard of stock video?
Yeah, I have like 2 stock video subscriptions.
Yeah, so instead of having two, you just submit it to Blackbox and they put it out to 4 places. So it saves you time.
Oh, so it's like Anchor does that with podcast platforms. So yeah, yeah, right, yeah.
I don't have a lot of time, so if I can upload once and have someone else put it to 4 outlets, like, I'm all in. So, but they're also
That's
working
awesome.
on well, some distribution solutions for creators that will earn money because people want our content, plain and
Yeah.
simple. They want to see what we got because we make awesome things, but they don't necessarily want to pay if they don't have to. So make them pay. Like, don't give it away for free,
Yeah.
because we need to pay our bills too.
Right. And
I feel like the starving artist thing, like I feel like there's so much momentum against that now that it's like the guy who is the CEO of Patreon, Jack Conti. He's like, Patreon's a huge company now. They pay like $300 million to creators like last year, and he's all about like empowering the artist to the point where he'll like sacrifice his own company if it means that artists are going to get paid more. Like, it's not about him winning the race and making the most money for himself. It's like, so I just think there's so much like there's an audience for that, and there's like a market for that, and it's like people want to. There's also a lot of people who do want to pay creators too. Like, especially if you've given people free content for so long, like there's going to be people who want to return the favor. So I'm excited about that. But I do want to hear like a lot of I've also heard other alternatives to like if you don't want to like start a business and be like an internet creator and make documentaries that way or movies or whatever. People will say you could get a job in a studio like National Geographic, or like I've found a documentary position at Barstool Sports online, or being a journalist. I would love to hear what it's like doing that on the journalist side.
Um, so what is it like being a journalist? Is that
Like cause you if I'm correct, you would be making videos and documentary style content as an independent journalist.
so yeah, I worked for a newspaper, the Sacramento Bee, for 14 years, and I did photojournalism and then I did videography. So um, I left about 2 years ago. The industry had changed quite a bit, and in a nutshell, wasn't happy anymore. So I moved on as an independent. But when I worked there, it was a lot of fun for many, many years. But as far as being a creator in the video sphere, I think the most I did was shot, produced, and published 3 videos in one day, which is insane. Like the speed at which we had to create this content. The good thing about it is I got really, really fast. So if people need something quickly, I'm able to do it. But I also felt the need to put more time and more quality into my work at some point. I wasn't happy with these quick turnover videos. But as a visual professional, pounding the pavement 5 days a week, I mean, I feel very confident in my skills as a video journalist and as a photojournalist that I can do whatever I need to do. So it's a great job, especially for someone who's young, just out of college, to cut their teeth and just like work really hard and learn a lot, you know. And for some, they like that. They like that pace where it's just in and out, in and out, in and out. But for me, I wanted to do something of more depth.
Right. So then what is being an independent journalist like?
It's funny though, owning your own business, it's feast or famine, you know. In December, I had to turn down 3 jobs because I was too busy. I already had 3 jobs going, and then 3 more requests. I had to turn them down. And then after the new year, these things really slowed down, and I'm like, hey, anybody want to hire me? So it's like feast or famine, and it kind of comes and goes. So you kind of have to ride that roller coaster and have your irons in different fires, so to speak. So I've got a lot of things going on, a lot of projects, and it's fun. It's really fun, but it's good to also have a little savings account to cover those months where there's not as much work.
Right. So are you are you a freelance videographer or a freelance journalist? Oh, okay. So what's it like being a freelance journalist? Like, how does that process look?
Um, well, there's so many things that you could do. So it could be, you know, freelancing for AP or the local newspaper or whatever. I actually haven't done a whole lot of that since I went freelance in the past couple years. But for me, what it's looking like more often is that nonprofits want videos, or even corporations, it could be nonprofits or corporations, they want a journalistic feel to their product. So they may want to make a video, but they don't want it to be all slick and corporate-y. They want something that's more immediate and journalistic in feel. And so that's kind of where I shine. And I have another colleague that I partner with in telling these stories. So we did some COVID-19 work. I've worked a lot with healthcare, stuff like that. So they may be corporations or nonprofits, but they want journalistic style work.
Gotcha. So how would one listening to this podcast start getting into that if it sounds interesting to them?
I would say that when you're shooting, you would have to not direct people at all. So if you want to say, okay, I want to get a journalistic style, don't tell people what to do. Say, I'm going to come in and I'm going to film exactly what you're doing, and don't change anything for me. Because that's like rule number 1 when you're a journalist, is you can't change anything. You can't move a light. You can't move someone's soda can out of the frame. You can't touch anything. You have to shoot it exactly as it is, and then get comfortable with creating visuals when you don't have that type of control. You're just responding to your environment and capturing moments as they occur. So not saying, well, you know, talk to this person. It's like, no, just get it as it's going. So ask when the action is and then film the action, and don't change a thing. And do that over and over and over and over again until you can like do it like super fast and do it well every time.
I feel like you just described the same exact process of filming an on-the-go documentary. Like on location, you're just like my saying is like film now, tell the story later. Like
That's an interesting thought. I saw that. I was, researching it a little bit and I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about that because on the one hand, I get your get up and go attitude, like
Yeah.
I love that. But on the other hand, I'm always filming to edit in my head. Maybe because being a journalist, I had to edit like so fast. I'm shoot to edit. Like I'm editing in my brain before I even get back to the office.
Yeah. I would say they're not mutually exclusive. Like not like first of all, I also made that video like a year and a half ago. So, I think at the time I was thinking like I didn't explain it well enough, but I do agree like the point is like yeah, get up and go and like don't try to overthink it, but two, like you can't like when I was making my documentary that I made that video about, every scene I was shooting or scene that I was shooting, it was like I was thinking like I was like trying to shoot a story that I was building in my head as it was happening. Like I was hoping certain things would happen and looking for certain behaviors and like if a team was like making a comeback, I was like shooting it a certain way. So yes, I'm with you on that too.
I think to a certain extent, though, filmmakers they're going to fall into one or two camps. It's either going to be more of the journalistic style, documentary style, or the more of the narrative style, and they're going to fall apart on either end. Because some people their heart is in narrative, and they're like, "Well, I just do documentary because pays the bills or whatever," and
Documentary pays the bills. How?
I've heard this on filmmakers groups, but like I feel like people either want to control the scene and they do well with that, or they want to like let the scene play out and figure out how they're going to portray it, and you're kind of inclined to one or the other. Um, but as we're talking about building that story in your head, like there is some real good truth about what you said to do the story later, because sometimes you've got to let go of your own narrative to let the truth come out.
Yes. That's what I've learned. Yeah, but like that's what I've also realized recently is like after months and months and months of editing the documentary I'm working on now, some new cream rises to the top and I'm like I couldn't have planned for this, but it's so perfect and poetic like certain like themes and like for example like we shot a bunch of footage near the water. And I didn't realize this until after, but like I can use that as a metaphor in the film to mean something, and I couldn't have planned that beforehand. And it's like that kind of stuff like I like to think of it as like the truth that is truth coming out that I have no effect on. It's like it almost edited itself in there. So, yes.
It really does when it reveals itself, and it always does. After some frustration, it'll just kind of like whoosh, come out, and it's like I couldn't have written this, you know, I couldn't
No.
have come up with this. So for me, I like to respond to this synergy you have with your story, and
Yeah.
that give and take of like molding the story, but then also like having it push back and becoming something else. It's a beautiful process to me.
Yeah. Like the thing I've noticed in my limited experience has been I can only really pick the things that are intriguing to me that I don't have control over what's interesting to me. I feel like I am who I am based on my own experiences. So is everybody else. And then there's certain stories that attract you and it's just your job to kind of show up and not be some creative genius who like pushes his weight on everything, because I don't think that exists in documentary filmmaking. It's more just like how empathetic can I be to like what's going on, and then like know how to film it correctly and edit it correctly. But even when you think you're editing correctly, stuff comes up that's so genius that's not really your fault at all. Like it's there, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Like,
Yeah, it sounds like you fall in the documentary camp to me.
I do. I was on a narrative set the other day and I couldn't like it was so boring to me. I don't know why, but maybe that's why, like what you just said, like people fall apart on either end of the spectrum. Why do you think that?
It's just two completely different ways of thinking, I think. I mean, I've been in situations where I've been hired. They say they want a journalistic feel, and then they expect me to set everything up. And I kind of fall apart in that situation because I'm like, that's not how I work. That's not how my brain works. Like I don't want to sit and arrange things. I don't. Like I want to like come in and like let it move me forward. And
Yeah.
it,
When you say let it move you forward, are you talking about like the most, is that what's so engaging to you about making a documentary, is like being in the now, and like, is that what you say by that? Like, elaborate on that more.
just the interaction, I think, or that energy between the filmmaker and the subject, or like you're really having to feel your way through it. You're responding to what's in front of you, right? Like you're paying keen attention to people's their reactions, their facial expressions, their body movements, and you're just responding to that. And then you've also got this library of composition, color, like all of the technical aspects that you're dealing with. But then for me, I get into a flow state. I'm sure you've heard of that. It's a flow state where all the technical stuff is just it's so ingrained in me that it just responds to the emotional. So the subject gives you the emotion, and then the technical comes out of your brain, and then together it creates your visuals. And that's my flow state. You know, uh, arranging things and telling people what to do and say is not my flow state. And probably for a narrative filmmaker, that probably is their flow state. Like they want to, okay, now stand here and do this. And like, okay, it's just a complete, like you can't mix the two. It's not the same.
But that's interesting. I've heard I've heard the contrary though, which is documentary filmmaking and narrative filmmaking follow such similar principles in from the bird's eye view. Like a lot of it is dealing with characters and positioning characters in certain situations, and but also being empathetic enough to let people do their own thing. Like Martin Scorsese has made great narratives and great documentaries, and he talks about it like it's the same thing. Like if he's making a documentary with Mick Jagger, he's literally just like letting Mick Jagger do his thing and capturing it and being empathetic to the moment. But also when he's working with Robert De Niro, he's not telling Robert De Niro how to act. And that's why people love working with him so much, is because he lets people do their thing so much. Um,
But you've got to have actors that can do that.
yeah, he's carried by very talented actors. Yeah,
He didn't start off that way. So maybe in the beginning you have to bring that out of someone. It's like when you're photographing someone and they're a model versus not a model, right? Like if they're a model and they know how to do all the posing, then you can just respond. But if they're like not a model, you got to tell them exactly what to do, and it's a different thing altogether.
I've also go ahead.
What you're saying, I can see what you're saying, that there's probably more in common than I'm giving credit for, which is why I say I'm an industry outsider with filmmaking.
Here's my thing though. I don't know jack shit about anything. Like I'm literally trying to learn right now. So I'm just saying what I've heard and trying to like size it up against what you're saying.
That's a good attitude to keep for the rest of your career.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Just keep that out.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they say that's what you got to do to sustain success. It's like always be a student. So cool. Well, thank you. I think we can wrap it up. I think it's been a half hour, but thank you for your time. This was literally just for anybody who's listening. Literally, we had one interaction in a comment that was on like my feed on Instagram. I didn't follow you. I commented back on your post, and then I was like, "Hey, let's do a podcast." So this is literally our first conversation ever. But I think it was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
So
All right. Well, thanks for having me on, and I wish you a lot of luck, and I think you're going to do great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll stay in touch about my discoveries on how to make money with documentary. All right. Hopefully, yeah. All right. Have a good one. Thank you.